Hello, everybody. My name is Alan, and it's that time once more. Let's talk metal. Got some really awesome headbanging killers to show you tonight and play some clips of too. A lot of these tonight are going to be, I guess, what you would call mini albums, which is a term that always kind of bugged me. You had single, you had EP, you had LP. Did you really need a format squeezed in between album and EP? I don't know. But whatever you call them, these have some excellent heavy metal material on them. But yeah, a lot of these run about 5 or 6 songs and, come in maybe close to or just under that 30-minute mark. Some cool stuff. All these are American bands tonight. And we're sticking to a really narrow time frame. All of these came out between 85 and 87. So we're kind of looking at a 3-year window here when some absolutely killer stuff got put out. First one that we're going to check out tonight is by a band called Stormtrooper out of Los Angeles, and they did a 12-inch called Armies of the Night. Let's give it a listen. So yeah, absolute killer by Stormtrooper out of LA. It's the only thing they ever released, which seems like a real shame. Although I think there are a lot of bonus tracks on one of the reissues. So maybe there were some demo recordings that just never got much circulation. This one was put out on the Ironworks label, which is one of those either collector's paradise labels or the bane of collector's labels, depending on how you look at it, because their catalog is really convoluted with a lot of weird variants and stuff. But all the tracks on this Stormtrooper EP are just crushing. They're high energy. They've got a good crunch to them. Vocals have a good snarl to them. There's a real punky vibe at times. So wouldn't be surprised if these guys, had grown up cutting their teeth with some punk or maybe even early hardcore bands. And there's an element of that which gives it a lot of energy. It's an excellent EP, great one to track down if you're into that kind of stuff. All right, up next tonight, we're going to move over to Louisiana, which of course has produced a lot of cool metal stuff, but we usually think of it in more recent terms with all like, the sludge kind of stuff, or stoner bands, Down, I Hate God, Acid Bath and stuff like that. But you did have some stuff back in the day as well, including this band called Hammer Witch, which started out in Louisiana and then relocated to Dallas later on. In 87, they released this 6-song mini LP, and let's take a listen to one of the tracks. But for this one, I've pulled up the track Judgment Day. So that's some of the Hammerwitch Return to Salem 6-track mini album with the track Judgment Day. Really good pounding metal there. At times, they remind me a lot of classic metal Church. I think you can hear it on that track in particular pretty nicely. Again, the band started out in Louisiana. They later moved to Dallas, and they did put out a little more material later on. They demoed some stuff, but it was several years later. Let me double check my notes here. I think it was more around 91. Yeah, so it was about 4 years later when they did a Legacy of Pain demo, and then another one in 93. I've heard the 91 demo, and it's been a long time, but I remember thinking that it had moved a lot more towards a sort of, thrashy, almost deathy sound. It very much made me think immediately that, okay, these guys were starting to copy like the X-Hoarder formula a lot more so, moving away from the traditional metal sounds of Hammerwitch and on the EP and trying to get, a lot more aggressive sounding. Didn't really click with me at the time I heard it. The EP is, or again, I guess technically mini album. Just don't like that term. But a very cool one. All the songs on it are very strong. This is one that is one of those kind of semi-rarities. It is a little pricey, but it does turn up on a relatively regular basis. You will see picture disc copies at times. The picture discs are an unofficial re-release. So yeah, that's a boot that showed up much, much later. One thing that was kind of funny about the Hammerwitch release, it obviously didn't sell very well. I've seen numbers as high as 1,000 copies were made. And I've been told by some of the record collectors and diggers who go out and really, mine for this stuff in the wild, that for a while, there were tons of extra copies of this left over that never really even got distributed. So if you went to either the original label or pressing plant, someone associated with making the record, they had tons of copies of this just kind of sitting there in their, cut out free, please take one bin for anybody who happened to, visit. So, at times this was easy to get. It's become, a harder one over time, relatively collectible, and I think you can hear why. It's really high quality stuff. All right, speaking of high quality stuff, I'm going to look at another mini LP from 1987. This one's from a California band called Emerald. This one is a Christian band, and they put out this one release called Armed for Battle. They did some demos and stuff also, but this was really their only official release. And let's check out a little bit of the track called We Attack. There's a little bit of Emerald, We Attack, from the Armed for Battle mini LP in 87. One of the best Christian metal bands I've ever come across. All the songs on this are very good. As you can hear there, very much in the sort of Judas Priest vein, lots of big power chords and such. A couple of the songs on here actually trend towards a little bit more on the atmospheric, almost doomy side. In particular, you have a song, I think it's literally called Wings of Doom. Yep. And also Look to the Stars has this very cool atmospheric aura to it as well. In terms of Christian bands, they remind me most of the band Saint on their Time's End release, another really good Christian heavy metal pounder. Uh, but yeah, they did some more tracks, as I mentioned, I think already. They have some bonus tracks when this has been reissued, and excellent band. They had an appearance on a compilation album at one point too. Trying to double check which one that was. Uh, do I have that here? Don't have that handy. Sorry. But yeah, they were on something like one of the California metal compilations. One of those had a couple of tracks. Another band, the members didn't have a lot of connections to other bands except for the bassist. The bassist, Roger Martin, was on the first several Vengeance Rising albums, like Once Dead and such. It's another Christian metal band. They were more of a thrash band and had pretty good record distribution back in the day. So a lot of folks would be familiar with some of those old Vengeance Rising. There's always some debate about the band was supposed to be really called Vengeance, and at one point Rising kind of accidentally got stuck on there, so that's a story for another video. But regardless, the Emerald EP, really good stuff to pick up here. And yes, I know I keep saying EP. I really don't like that term mini album, but excellent release. The original, this is one that over the years has gotten more pricey to try to get the original. But again, you can just get the reissue, hear all the cool music, and don't worry about the price tag so much. All right, up next, we are going to Eugene, Oregon. Again, Oregon's a place we think of as having a lot of cool metal bands in more recent memory, but they had bands back in the 80s as well, including this one. This is a 12-inch EP, 4 tracks, and it's by a band called Mistress. Well, they spelled the name wrong, so bonus points for that. Let's check out one of the Mistress tracks here called Take on the World. All right, so there's a little Mistress. Now, you know these had to be the coolest guys in all of Eugene, Oregon in 1986 when this thing came out. Rocking the striped trousers. Never got the striped trousers look, but I guess I just wasn't cool enough in 1986. Anyway, only thing the band released, they later changed their name to, wait for it, Zoo Gang. I guess it's like the Get Along Gang, but at the zoo. I don't know what to say about that. And supposedly the Zoo Gang material went in a bit more of a commercial rock direction, which you can hear on this Mistress EP. There are definitely elements that are leaning towards kind of, the sleaze metal sound a little bit. But at the same time, it's still propelled forward pretty well with, a heavy metal beat for sure. Is speed sleaze a category? Am I allowed to invent that? I don't know. But it's pretty good. 3 of the tracks are pretty good. One of them is a little weaker. It gets a little bit more into that, glamish leaning side. But it's a cool EP nonetheless. It's another one that, when it shows up, sometimes folks ask a lot for it, but a reasonable number of copies have turned up over the years. Sometime in the past decade, one of the band members surfaced and had a bunch of sealed copies. As of the time of this recording, if you look on Discogs, 2 or 3 of the copies that are listed for sale, they all are still sealed, which normally you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty rare to find. Not so much with this one, because a bunch of sealed copies did get introduced into the collector's market within the past decade. But yeah, it's a cool EP. I don't believe that one has had any reissues. Maybe there's a Zoo Gang anthology out there that includes it as bonus tracks. I don't know. For all I know, Zoo Gang was the hottest thing going in Eugene, Oregon in I think they did that in the early 90s. But I'm just going to leave that be and move on to our last entry for the night. Another one of the really killer mini albums from the same time frame. Now, for this one, we're moving over to the Chicago area. This band, I think, started out in Indiana and relocated to Chicago. Once again, it's the story of they put out just one release along with a couple of demos, but this is really their only vinyl appearance, and it's a good one. We're going to check out Tyrant Rain and their Year of the Tyrants mini LP. Let's see. For this one, I think I've queued up the track Reign of Terror. So let's give that a listen. Rocking out hard is Chicago style. Lots of great Chicago bands, and Tyrant Rain is right there with the best of the best. Gonna call it power speed thrash. Got elements of all 3 styles worked in there and doing it extremely well. Musicians on the Chicago scene were pretty incestuous in terms of working with other bands and projects. And yeah, some of these guys from Tyrant Rain were involved with other bands on the scene. They had connections to the band Winterkill. More recently, it looks like Warcry was one of the really early bands on the Chicago scene, has become active again, and it's a lot of the guys from Tyrant Rain who have helped resurrect the Warcry banner as well. And Tyrant Rain is technically listed as active, though again, they haven't really put anything out in ages. They had some demos, which were pretty good, and they had this one killer mini album. The songs are all very good. There's one little oddity. The last track on side B is called Fade Away, and it kind of sticks out a little bit compared to the other tracks. The other 5 tracks are very much in that power speed thrash style, like you just heard on the clip. Fade Away, it kind of doesn't have the thrashy or speedy elements as more. It's a little bit more of a power metal song, going by 80s US power metal standards, not, 90s European Stradivarius Happy Dolphins jumping through a rainbow kind of power metal standards. I like some of that stuff, but that's not what we're talking about here tonight. But it's still a very cool song. It just sounds very weird tacked on to the end of this mini album. It's kind of like, one of these songs is not like the other, but all these songs do still rock. So the Tyrant Rain one, it's another one. You can find, collections and stuff that will have all their stuff. You do not have to go hunting down the original vinyl, which it can be a pain to find in this day and age. All right, so there you go. About 20 minutes. We've blazed through 5 incredibly good mini LPs from the US metal scene. Right there, kind of a golden age around 85 to 87. A lot of bands were transitioning over to more thrashy styles, but you still had a lot of, pure traditional heavy metal elements included on these things as well. And I think that shows with the array of stuff we've checked out tonight. But now it is time to wrap up. So let's talk metal in the comments down below. What other heavy metal mini albums do you really like and think are some of the best up there? They don't have to be just US bands. I know there's some good ones from overseas, such as the Pretty Maids debut. Talked about that in other videos, though. So let me know what some of your favorites from this odd format are. And hey, you probably know some I don't. So hook me up, let me know what's out there, and I'll go check them out when I get a chance. Until next time, everybody, stay safe, and as always, keep banging your head.